The Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus went on with his disciples in the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist," and others, "Elijah," and still others, "one of the prophets." Jesus asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And Jesus sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Jesus said all of this quite openly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, Jesus rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.
You may be seated. This pandemic has presented anyone in a leadership position with multiple challenges that were totally unforeseen. There's no playbook for leadership when the stakes are high, and there's certainly no playbook for what to do in the face of a 21st century pandemic. Many of you in your professions are leaders, and you have no doubt discovered these challenges. As we look at the various leadership positions many of you hold in the world of education, the world of business, or in the life of the church, I know good leadership is something all of us highly value within our community and our culture. We work very hard to develop leadership abilities within our kids because we want them to be leaders. We need good leaders in every aspect of society. We give awards to people who demonstrate strong leadership ability. Higher education is a place where we intently focus on developing leaders. However, the obscure, unspoken message communicated by this emphasis on leadership is often that being a follower is for losers. We do not often encourage our children to be followers. We do not give out awards for being followers. As a matter of fact, in today's culture, the only place where one really is encouraged to be a follower might be on Twitter or online someplace for one online program. And if we really take an honest look at our inability to follow public health guidelines during this pandemic, we discover how challenged we are to be followers, even if people's lives literally depend on it. Yet, Followership is the other side of leadership. Jesus' words to us today cut right through our perceptions of leadership and followership. As we hear him teach about the kind of leadership he calls for, and especially what it means to follow. And I have to say, his words are rather hard to hear. The question of who is willing to follow Jesus Christ is really the big defining question of Christianity. And Jesus places it front and center as we hear today's gospel reading. Today, Jesus asks his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" In response, ever impetuous Peter gets all excited and professes that Jesus is indeed the long-awaited Messiah. Jesus then begins to explain things to his disciples, saying, "It is necessary that the Son of Man proceed to an ordeal of suffering, be tried and found guilty by the elders, high priests, and religion scholars, be killed, and after 3 days rise up alive." As soon as Peter hears this, he immediately backs away and he rebukes Jesus. Jesus' words shatter the glamour of following the long-awaited Messiah. This is certainly not the kind of life Peter wants to undertake. While Jesus seems to be the Messiah, the Jewish people had never, ever expected a leader who must suffer and die. That was simply ludicrous and, quite honestly, irrational. Who in their right mind chooses to proceed to an ordeal of suffering, as Jesus says he is doing? And who in their right mind wants to follow a leader who is on his way to die? Lest we judge Peter too quickly, we need to take a serious look at ourselves. Many of us choose religion and come to believe important things deeply because we feel they are good for us. And we like to participate in a religion that makes us feel good. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. We like a faith that fits our comfortable recreational lifestyles but does not demand too much from us. We want to follow a strong God who heals our illnesses, provides ample prosperity, guarantees security, urges our sports teams on to victory, and generally keeps us happy, healthy, and wise. However, the things of God involve an honest confrontation with the pain and the suffering of the world. The things of God always involve love. And when you truly love, you can't escape this. There will be pain and suffering. Suffering is not appealing. If any one of us is offered a life of suffering versus a life free from suffering, you can bet your bottom dollar we are going to go for the one that is pain-free. Yet this is where we must get very honest about the Christian life. Christianity is not about living an easier life or believing in a God we can turn to as our personal Santa Claus. I've mentioned that before, too. That is not what Christianity is about. Quite frankly, following Jesus is often going to make our lives more complicated and challenging. Following Jesus does bring a certain amount of suffering because it requires that we truly love others and care for others. Following Jesus demands we care for the common good. It demands we love and care for others as we love ourselves. It requires that we let go of self, die to self, and it is really so hard to let go of self. We cannot escape this reality as we live through this pandemic, as we face the pain, as we continue to love others. And as my dear friend Bill Utrick says, The things of God involve an honest confrontation with pain. The things of God involve recognizing that not everybody is going to like you, that indeed you might be rejected, that love sometimes will take you to the hard places. The mission and ministry of love is not easy. Quaker theologian and philosopher Elton Trueblood clearly understood this when he wrote, "In many areas, the gospel, instead of taking away people's burdens, actually adds to them. Occasionally, we talk of our Christianity as something that solves problems, and there is a sense in which it does. But long before it does so, however, it increases both the number and the intensity of the problems." And as a community of faith, we have faced that over the past year and a half. It comes with what loving is all about. In today's gospel reading, Jesus continues to teach his disciples about what following him is really going to mean. And I love this. I'm quoting from the Bible, The Message by Eugene Peterson. Jesus says, "Anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat. I am. Don't run from suffering, embrace it. If any of you want to follow me, you must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Follow me, and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to saving yourself, your true self. What good would it do to get everything you want and lose you, the real you? What could you ever trade your soul for?" The point at which Jesus says this to his disciples is a pivot point in Mark's telling of the Jesus story. From this point on in Mark's gospel, Jesus begins to show us how to die. We have been given life, and Jesus now demonstrates how we are to give it up, give it away, truly let go of self. I think for most of us, this is an idea that runs counter to all that we want to believe. It really does seem irrational. This was not what Peter wanted to hear, and it is not what we want to hear. Yet Jesus makes it absolutely clear that God does not care about giving us all of the things that make for creature comforts. What God does care about are matters of the heart. Jesus makes it clear that if you want to have a meaningful life that truly matters, you are going to have to hand over your petty obsessions, your mistaken priorities, and yes, this malignant focus on individualism that is permeating our culture. You are going to have to think more about loving than being loved, more about working to understand than being understood, and more about forgiving than being forgiven. The life that has been packaged and sold to us in our culture is not real life. And we need to die to those illusions if we want to live into the abundant life God wants for us. But the things of God are not something we can buy or earn. Like love and grace, all the things of God, the very life of God, are all gift and can only be given away. Only when you give your life away for the sake of others do you really discover it. As Jesus begins his relentless march to the cross, he challenges each one of us to follow. Today, Isaac Webb chooses to follow. He will make affirmation of his faith in Jesus Christ and recommit himself as a follower of Jesus. Today, we as a faith community celebrate 65 years of being a presence in this community, 65 years of being a community that follows the way of Christ, the way of the cross. Today, we recommit ourselves to continue to be the kind of presence and witness in this world that truly cares for others and loves others as we love ourselves, taking and bearing Christ's creative and redeeming word into this greater community. As we live into our 66th year of life together in this place, it is time to follow. It is time to follow the leader who will gift us with life that truly matters. And you know what? The paradox, the amazing paradox is that when we follow this one called Jesus, the one who leads us to the cross, it is in that place where we find out what true leadership is really about.